Hi everyone, welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host Anikor, and today we have a great-looking man, Yousif Aslam, with us, who is the co-founder and MD of Heavenly Desserts in UK, based out of Derby. So before, me and Yusuf have been discussing about it behind the camera, but I really want Yusuf to share about, you have been into franchise and into multiple things. So if you could share a bit with our viewers, about with our listeners on, about your journey, where did it all start and what's happening with Heavenly Desserts right now?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on. It's a great pleasure. It's been a 15-year journey within this particular business, just over 15 years. So we originally started in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
The brand started just after the recession or the financial crisis at that particular time. So we opened our first restaurant, in the city of Birmingham, and between 2008 and 2016, we went on to open a handful of further restaurants. So I think by the time
Wow.
2016 came round, we had
Mm-hmm.
four restaurants that
Mm-hmm.
were trading. Um, it was a journey because or it was an interesting journey, should I say, because the concept that we came forward with was not really trending at that particular time. So this concept of having a dessert, an outlet that was open 7 days a week, from midday to midnight, offering such a large menu of desserts. So
Wow.
this type of concept was unknown during that period. So it took us a few years to really get some momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
And we really reached the peak of that momentum in around about 2016, and this particular sector in the UK then started to grow.
Mm-hmm.
um, so we were at a crossroads where we needed to decide, okay, what route are we going to take in order to grow our footprint? Because by that time it was very obvious that we'd built a good following,
Yeah.
a good reputation in the market, but most importantly, a profitable business model. So we decided, after lots of thinking and planning, to franchise our business. We were quite reluctant to do so at the beginning, because up until this point we had created this business which was very successful with lots of blood, sweats, and tears, and we were reluctant to place that into the hands of other people.
Mm.
But then we very quickly realized that actually some of the best brands within the world, in any sector, food, accountancy, sports, coaching, for example,
Exactly.
some of the best brands around the world that we all interact and consume from are franchise models.
Exactly.
So we made a conviction that we were going to franchise, but we were going to do it right.
Hmm.
And then we kicked off our franchise journey in 2017.
Wow.
Um, so at the point of franchising, we had four restaurants. Today we have 56 trading
Wow.
in the UK. So anywhere from Scotland all the way down to Brighton, and in between. And we recently opened our first franchised restaurant in North America, in Canada.
Oh, lovely.
So
So
and
now you are international. Love
Yeah,
that.
yes, thankfully. So we've got some really good and exciting plans to grow the Canadian market, and we are very shortly. Well, we're on the cusp of opening in Pakistan as well this summer, and in Germany as well,
Wow.
and another really big country or economy in South Asia, which I won't mention just yet because it's not officially news
Yeah.
yet. But we've got some big news to share very shortly. So it's been a very interesting journey. Lots of learnings along the way.
Mm.
Some failures, but some of our best lessons have come from them failures. So we're all enjoying it. We have a super team which we'll talk about in a short while. And all in all, it's been a good journey so far, and we're enjoying it.
Oh, lovely. This is so exciting. I love that interesting journey. And yes, of course, I'm sure it will be peaks and troughs because it's never a straight line. But
Yeah.
what I'm interested to understand is what in 2008, when you started this, why Heavenly Desserts? What inspired you to start that?
So prior to that period, we were involved in a different business enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
which was also a successful one. It was also in food and beverage industry, but that particular business was starting to reach its peak.
Okay.
And that segment that we were in was also starting to reach its peak. So naturally, when you're within business and you start to realize that the business that you're in or the sector that you're in is going to be impacted because of changes in consumer behavior or a large amount of competition, we decided to look for the next thing that we wanted to do. It was very clear for us that we wanted to remain in the food and beverage industry because that's what we knew well. Um, and we then also went through a period of lots of deliberation to understand what it is that we wanted to do. What was quite apparent that we wanted to do something that was different and something that was new and something that had some longevity about it. Um, but having a look around, Europe and what was kind of happening in America, we decided that what we wanted to do was settle on, in America, what's commonly known as ice cream parlors. Um, we settled on the fact that the model was going to be based on an ice cream parlor concept, but with some enhancements, um, and for it to be delivered in a premium setting.
That is quite interesting. So I mean, overall, you were one of the you were one of the business leaders which started the whole, created that space itself, because earlier it was not, the concept was not there. So really pleased about that.
Yeah, we were
But
we, we, we were we were certainly very early on in the UK, as part of the an early group of say business owners or entrepreneurs who set about creating this particular
particular,
segment, this segment in the UK.
that is so that is tremendous. But Yusuf, 56 branches in UK itself, and now you are international in different countries, and I'm sure you will be there in almost every country of the world. But if you reflect back, what has been that sort of one thing uh, that has attribute to this whole success growth story?
Um, I mean, that's a really good question. It's also a broad question as well. And I believe that it's never one thing, in my opinion.
Mm,
I think it's a
mm,
culmination of things
mm,
that come together, and a variety of them. So, I mean, if you want to start from the business owner's perspective, you've got to have grit, you've got to have
mm,
perseverance, you've got to
mm,
be able to have the appetite to take sensible risks,
mm,
um, and 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 most importantly, have the appetite to work hard, because there is no substitute to
mm,
work hard. So that's one area that I think is important to be present for it to make a difference. And then everything else branches off and stems off from that. So depending on the type of business model you have, your team is as important, you know, because one can't work without the other. So you can have a great set of business leaders who have
mm,
who have perseverance, they have grit, they have patience, they have the drive.
mm,
But without a great team around you, you can't move
mm,
forward with your business objectives. Um,
mm,
so I think that's another key important part, being surrounded by the right people. If
mm,
if it's a franchised based
mm,
model or a business, then outside of your immediate team, having
mm.
the right franchise partners on board
Exactly.
who share the same sentiments,
Mm,
who have the same drive, is also a very important part.
so
So so it's never one thing. This is just some snippets of what I think are the key ingredients, and it's a subject we can talk about
yeah,
for another hour.
exactly. And it's like, you it's difficult to sum up the entirety in years of journey so far into any one particular, which I absolutely understand. But when you talked about team, which is a very very key element of a business success, so I want to understand, how do you foster a positive sort of a work environment where the team grows? What sort of qualities are you looking at people in terms of being an employer?
Yeah. So look, I mean, leadership is something that I've actually been talking about, quite recently,
Mm,
within offline conversations and even online conversations. I recently, did a post on my LinkedIn talking about the leadership and the importance of it, within the workplace and outside of the workplace. Um, and look, my learnings are that, you've got to cultivate a healthy workplace culture. Okay.
mm,
Now, what does that mean? Because that can be subjective and that can mean different things to different people. But ultimately, at the core of that statement, you must cultivate, and business leaders must cultivate an environment where your team feel empowered, not only to make decisions, but actually voice their opinion. Um,
mm,
and if you're able to create that dynamic within the workplace, then that really is the starting point to success. Through working with your team. So one of the things that we've or I certainly feel we've done really well here, and I guess a measure of doing that well is the fact that our head office team turnover has been really really low. um,
mm,
is creating that environment where it's an
mm,
open door policy, that whether you're sitting with the directors, or whether you're sitting with middle management, um, or whoever it is around the table with you, we've created an environment where everybody feels that they are able to air their opinion on what they
mm,
think is right or wrong when it
mm,
comes to a business decision. So that's that.
mm,
In short, I think it's very important for organizations, irrespective of what sector they're in, to have a defined set of values.
mm,
um, and them values have got to be real. They've got to be from within. Them values have to come from the actual real DNA of that
yeah,
particular business.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's easy to get 3 or 5 words off Google
exactly,
and put it into a
exactly.
statement. But actually, if everybody in that organization isn't living and breathing by them values, and
Yeah.
all of the decisions in that particular organization don't link back to a value of the business,
Mm.
then it's difficult to create that culture.
So true, so true. I mean, yes, we know how important the values is. I call the rules of the game. But if you do not define your own, then believe me, people who are coming from outside will define your rule of the game. So it's better
And
to
yeah,
define.
and you can't copy them from other organizations
Yeah,
either.
absolutely, absolutely.
They,
But
they, I believe they're deeply entrenched within the DNA of the individuals within the business, i.e., perhaps the founders. Yeah.
mm, and it's good to know that everybody's talking about it, and especially I think this is also one of the key growth you have seen because you are so strong with your values, and that is where when you said the turnover sort of the head office, the team has been so stable, that clearly shows the growth and success of the business.
Yeah, because look, we've talked about positive leadership just now, but in our careers, everybody in some way, shape, or form has
Mm,
come across toxic leadership.
mm,
And the spectrum of toxic leadership or negative leadership is so large as well.
mm,
But in short, micromanaging, isn't going to help, with your team. Trust is a very important factor. I find that a lot of business leaders, whilst
mm,
they use all the buzzwords,
mm,
um, you know, they don't entirely trust their team to make the decisions, and that's where micromanagement then kicks in.
mm,
So it's about knowing the good and the bad,
mm,
of leadership. And again, as leaders, I often say, as leaders, we're also on a learning journey. So we're not going to get it right all the time, but if we are if our graph of learning is heading in the upwards trajectory, over time, then that has to have a positive impact on the team, and then the results that the organization is then delivering.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Yusuf, often when I speak to business owners, and it's not the rosy picture. We've talked about there are always peak and troughs. They face a lot of challenges in the daily happening. And most of the challenges I've seen, they fall into either of the three categories. It's either team or money aspect of the business, the growth aspect, or the time, because every business gosh, can we get more time in the day? Where do you see a challenge?
I mean, look, I think time is definitely an important thing. You can, sometimes, I too feel I wish there was 8 days in the week.
Mm,
But I guess but I see that as a positive because
mm,
that, if you don't have enough time to
mm,
do your work, then that means you've got a positive problem, because
mm,
that means that there is a lot of work to do,
mm,
and as long as it's the right type of work to do, because what
mm,
you find is some business leaders have a lot of work to do, because they are not delegating, or they don't
mm,
have the right amount of people within their team to deliver the volume of work that's required. So this conversation kind of can go two ways. So you either have
mm,
a leader who is really busy,
mm.
who but it's busy for the wrong reasons, or
Yeah.
you've got a leader who's really busy for the right reasons because they've got the appropriate amount of resource, but they're still really busy because they're scaling. And I don't think you can get away from that, because the other option, or the other third option within this discussion, is you're not busy, and you're sat around clicking your fingers. And if you find yourself in that situation, then you've got to ask yourself, why is that the case?
So now let's get, probably I'm putting that spotlight into your life. How do you balance your personal and business life? I understand, being busy, good, and definitely, having sometimes 8 days in a week. But how do you balance, any sort of tips and strategies that?
Yeah, I mean, look, balance is a subjective word, and it means different things to different people, especially when we talk about work-life balance.
Mm,
Yeah, in the context of whether you're a business leader, or whether you're in a senior management position, or any form of employment. So, firstly, I think it's a subjective matter, but if you deep dive into this matter, there's got to be a degree of balance that you're able to have. And look, that means different things for different people. For
mm,
me, it's certainly been a journey. There was a time where I used to do Monday to Friday in the office, and then I used to come in on a Saturday. Um,
mm,
so I kind of, for a half a day where I would work, 6.5, 5.5 days.
mm,
Um, but then I realized that actually on that Saturday I wasn't entirely productive, because
mm,
perhaps that there was a degree of burnout, or whatever
mm,
else
mm,
that there may have been involved. But it's a journey. So at the moment, I think the key thing for everybody is discipline,
mm.
and whatever balance works for you, you have to be disciplined within that dynamic. So you know. Um, it's a little bit more difficult, I think, for business leaders to
Mm,
create that complete balance. We can't do 45 hours a week, especially when we're operating a business, but also a scaling business. Um,
mm,
but you've got to just take opportunity of the right moments to be able to spend that time with your loved ones. So I typically now obviously don't work in the office on the weekends, but I will choose my moments over the weekend, where I'm actually in a little bit of downtime. There's nothing that I'm actually doing in that moment with family, and I'll take an hour or two, just to get on my laptop and just kind of do one or two things that actually perhaps may have been I've been behind on, um,
mm,
or something that I want to plan for for the week ahead. So yeah, my short answer is balance. Is means
mm.
different things to different people, but the key to creating whatever balance works for you is discipline.
Discipline. I love that. I love that. Yesterday, in fact, we had a 1 hour session on discipline itself and how important it is for everyone. And yeah, I mean, that's a different story, but there are so many success stories I've heard when you put that discipline in place, and things go into your default diary, and a matter of with discipline you start creating those good habits, things change massively
And
for the
again,
same
look,
person.
yeah, and again, as it's appearing to be, a bit of a theme in this interview, that it's a learning journey. So, the level of discipline you have today probably isn't going to be the same as what you had 2 years ago. Um, Hopefully, the level of discipline today is more, if you're on a journey of improvement.
Movement,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, you always compare yourself with your past, and try to become better version of your own self.
Yeah,
That
I
is
mean,
so
look,
good.
we hear all of these buzzwords that are
Mm,
thrown around in social media, but that particular one is true. You've got to compare yourself to yourself a year ago, 3 years ago, and 5 years ago, and that's really how you have to measure your own progress because there just is no value in measuring it against others around you.
mm. Absolutely. Yusuf, it, I can, listening to you, I can actually go back to your journey, I can experience what you've been through. But so that was a past. Want to dive into a little more into the vision. What is the vision for M&D Desert? What's in the next 5 years?
The
What's the
vision is
goal?
the vision is big.
Mm,
What we want to do now and what we've set about doing over the last couple of years is really taking that successful, franchise model that we created in the UK, and replicating that around the world with, good quality partners. So that journey for us has already started. So as I said, we're already operational in Canada, and we've got some really exciting plans in the pipeline already for further restaurants to open in that particular territory. And then we've strategically earmarked a number of different territories. So in Europe, for example, South Asia, there are some key territories that you just can't involve. So you just can't ignore.
ignore, yeah.
Um, and of course, the Middle East, for example, as well. So we're working, very hard on a daily basis to um, be a, working very hard on a daily basis in order to ensure that we're able to replicate this success story
Mm,
in other
mm,
territories. So, we have some numerical targets, so by the end of 2026, we want to have 100 stores
wow.
around the country between the territories that we are either already in or we're about to go into. So, you know, it feels like a reasonable and a sensible target,
Yeah,
because
absolutely. From 56 to 100, definitely seems very reasonable. What's the number for international? Where do you want to be?
so that number at the moment over the next 2 years is the international target. So
Mm,
so collectively between the UK estate, and around some of the initial territories that we have at the moment, the next 2 years is 100 stores that we want to reach. And look, whilst we always do some mid to long term planning, we
mm,
focus on the short to mid term plan.
yeah,
Hence why I only talk about the next 2 years, because the world is a very the world is changing very very quickly. Consumer habits, especially post COVID, and as we now just go deeper and deeper into this digital era that we're all living in, the world is changing very quickly. So, you know, we have a 5 year plan, but perhaps in year three we have to relook at that and adapt it based on what the consumer habits are like.
yeah, absolutely. And adaptability is the key. It's a buzzword right now. But I love that. 2 years, 100 stores for M&D desserts. Yeah, love that. Uh, Yusuf, it's so good to hear so much from you. There's so many golden nuggets coming out of our discussion. Um, this is my favorite and my last question to you. Yeah. Um, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, I don't often have the opportunity to think about that. Funnily enough, probably because things are so busy inside of work and outside of work too. But um, the advice will be certainly more than one point. I think the fundamental advice would be enjoy the moment,
Mm,
be present in the moment. Um, and this is universal advice. It's, you can apply this to the world of business and your journey with,
absolutely.
the journey within your business, or, your life outside of business. So be present, and enjoy the moment, whatever that moment is. Don't worry too much about the future because you can't control, to a degree, what is going to happen in the future. You can control it on the basis of, planning and
Mm,
strategic planning. And that gives you a degree of control, but ultimately, the future isn't in our control. So why worry about something that you just don't know what the outcome of something is going to be? And quite
exactly.
and there's a reason I said both of these things, because the latter often causes us not to be present,
Mm,
right? Um, and look, we all go through it,
mm,
we worry about what's going to happen about X or Y. and actually when you get to X or Y, it never really was as bad as you thought it was going to be in your head.
Mm.
So look, life is short. We don't know how, we don't know when our, when things are going to stop, for each individual. So, it could be tomorrow, it could be next month, or it could be next year. So enjoy the moment in whatever you're doing, be present in it. And it's difficult to do in this day and age because, we live in a digital era.
Yeah.
We're constantly having a sensory overload on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Exactly.
Whether that's digital or non-digital, the world is just moving forward very, very quickly, and that's
Very
fine.
high stimulus. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay because that's just the era that we live in. But it's about
Mm.
understanding how to navigate that, and like I said, not getting lost in the noise and just taking a step back. Um, and I think what I would probably finally say as a third point is, and this is something that I've learned as I've got older,
Mhm.
is that the advice I would give to myself is throughout your journey, practice more gratitude
Mm.
because quite often, I think for the most part of it, as individuals, because life is so busy, we don't get to stop and practice gratitude and actually appreciate, or perhaps society or life or the way things are in the world at the moment, and there's a lot of negativity on the news. For example, whenever you turn it on, there's more negative news, there is positive news, and it kind of puts you in this negative mind frame at times without realizing. And
Mm.
what that prevents you from doing is appreciating all the good things that you have, because at any one moment in time, if you stop wherever you are and you look around you, there is a lot of good things that everybody has, and it starts with the ability that we wake up every single day with our sight, our sense of smell, and a roof over our heads, and we don't have to worry about knowing where our next meal is coming from.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, I think these three pieces of advice is what I would give to my younger self, and
Mm.
something that I'm still trying to practice and get better at myself. I'm certainly not perfect, at practicing these, but you've got to make an effort.
Absolutely. I love what you had said. I think these are some of the golden nuggets which can be applied to any life, even, as an employer, employee, but some universal truth of life, which is definitely difficult, but not impossible. So,
Exactly.
on that note, Yusuf, thank you so much.
You're
It
welcome.
has been wonderful having you. Is there anything which I've not asked you, which you want to share with the listeners?
No, I think I'm quite happy with your questions. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to share my experience with you, and hopefully the listeners will be able to take some kind of value or benefit from it. Quite often, a lot of what we've discussed is is something that people already know. But sometimes you
Mhm.
just need to hear it again from somebody else just to kind of validate, that knowledge that you actually already have inside you and bring it to the surface. So thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Hanid, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Yusuf. It was lovely to have you.